Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. On the show tonight,
the historic assault weapons ban.
Illinois is a signature away from forbidding the most lethal guns. We're live in Springfield.
The next Speaker of the 118th Congress, Kevin McCarthy.
Local members of Congress on what a Republican-controlled House could mean for the next 2 years.
Thousands of Cook County residents could see their medical debt disappear. Find out how and if you qualify.
Chicagoans spent over 150 hours waiting in traffic last year. What's driving the congestion and possible solutions?
Detecting COVID-19 in wastewater, how researchers and residents can make use of the data in a new online tracker.
A newly discovered comet not seen in thousands of years will soon be visible in the night sky.
It's a lot of untapped talent in communities just like this, but you don't know about it until you actually go there.
We take you inside a new call center helping transform the Chatham neighborhood.
I'm Angelito, and coming up tonight, I'm taking you up in the sky to one of the city's most visible public art murals.
But first, some of today's top stories. A Willowbrook medical sterilization company agrees to pay up to $408 million to settle hundreds of lawsuits. Sterigenics is accused of illegally releasing cancer-causing waste into the air. The company says it was in its best interest to settle the more than 870 lawsuits because of the time and cost to try the other cases. A jury awarded a single cancer survivor $363 million last year. The EPA found the emissions increased cancer risks for people living as far as 25 miles away from the Willowbrook facility. Sterigenics closed the plant in 2019 under pressure from community groups, local officials, state lawmakers, and members of Congress.
Chicago City Council's Public Safety Chair asked the police department to fire an official with ties to the far-right Proud Boys. Alderman Chris Taliaferro says it's unacceptable in his opinion that Officer Robert Baker was suspended instead of fired. Multiple probes found Baker had extremist ties and that he lied in an internal police investigation.
Under those previous allegations where I told you one was sustained, the officer probably would have received about a 5-day suspension. However, in his mediation, he recommended for himself. And I don't know why he did this. I can't answer for that. But I do believe that he recommended a 120-day suspension, which he is currently serving.
Police Superintendent David Brown defended his decision not to fire the officer, and the department issued a statement that it doesn't tolerate its members associating with hate groups. Baker's suspension ends on March 1st. And it's official. Oakton Community College is rebranding. The new name, Oakton College. The change becomes official with the new semester in 10 days, but the campus is clearly already celebrating the change. Oakton says it remains an open access community college on its 2 campuses in Des Plaines and Skokie, as well as online. Coming up in the show, relieving millions of dollars in medical debt for Cook County residents. We share the details. But first, will Illinois officially ban certain assault weapons? Amanda Vinicky is live with that and more in Springfield right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors. A bustle of last-minute activity in Springfield. Amanda Vinicky joins us now from the state capitol with the latest. Amanda.
Yeah, Brandis, in Springfield, usually even when a bill is seemingly dead, there is a chance for it to be revived. But this really is do or die time, and that is because this is the last full day for the current makeup of the General Assembly. Everything will start fresh when a new group of lawmakers are sworn in tomorrow, which is why you have that last-minute bustle of activity during the lame duck session. Now, top of the to-do list that legislators wanted to get accomplished, and Democrats did, passing a so-called assault weapon weapons ban that backers call historic. Now, unlike previous versions, the age to get a license to buy, own, and use a gun in Illinois did not change. It remains 18 years old. The measure, however, does ban the future sale of guns that legislators and the state police deem to be assault grade. It also bans large capacity magazines.
It's time that we protect Illinois communities. It's time that we protect Illinois families. Let's end families having to change overnight.
Gun control groups had fought for a statewide ban for years, but they gained steam after the 4th of July mass shooting in Highland Park. Mayor Nancy Rotering calls this an important step and says that while Illinois is no island and there should be a federal ban, she says this move will make it, quote, that much harder for someone with horrible intentions to obtain a combat weapon. It is not final yet. Governor J.B. Pritzker has yet to sign this measure into law, but that is expected to happen really any time now. I look forward to signing this bill immediately so we can stop the sale of these deadly weapons as soon as possible, Pritzker said in a statement issued this afternoon. It would be, by the way, his first official action in his second term, even if that victory could possibly be short-lived. And that is because gun rights groups say that they are going to immediately sue and they will seek for a judge to prevent this law from taking effect. They, as well as Republican legislators, say they've got the Constitution on their side.
A lot of you guys over there despise our founders and you casually cast aside the principles that this country was founded on. But our founding fathers, they knew what they were doing. See, they had experienced the tyranny of the majority and they vowed that that was never going to happen in our country.
House GOP leader who's leaving that position and retiring, Jim Durkin, did vote for the ban. Durkin is a former prosecutor and says that he has too often witnessed firsthand the effects of gun violence. Now, another Republican figurehead, the GOP's nominee for governor, Darren Bailey, who, of course, lost election in November to Pritzker, echoed the sentiment of many gun owners who say that they will not comply with the provision of this measure that requires anyone who currently owns guns covered by the law to register their serial numbers with the state. I'll die on my front porch before anyone takes my guns away. My message to Springfield, if you want my guns, come get them, Bailey wrote in a tweet. Now, Bailey will no longer hold state office after tomorrow. He was also in line, however, with most of his party in voting against another measure that is set to get to the governor's desk tonight. And that package seeks to make Illinois even more of a safe haven for abortions by giving legal as well as insurance protections for out-of-state residents who come to Illinois to either receive or to help to provide an abortion. During a debate on this bill, Bailey quoted a line from Psalms and went on to say,
I have no words for it other than pure evil. This is wrong. God help us.
And here's the Senate sponsor's reaction.
The same God that's looking at you is also looking at me. And guess what? It's the same God that's giving me the inspiration in order to be able to do this. So we can disagree on a lot of different things, but don't sit here and tell me that you have the moral high ground on your soapboxes over mine. You don't get to decide what happens to my body. You don't get to decide what happens to the bodies of a lot of different people from other states that are coming to this state seeking refuge.
Governor Pritzker also in negotiations with that, so he's expected to sign it into law, as well as likely many of the other flurry of bills that are being debated in the General Assembly right now as I speak, and could pass on this final day of the legislative session. Why is that? Well, remember, of course, Democrats are in charge. Most of those, however, will get a bit of a pause between when the legislature takes action and the governor does. Not so with that gun bill. the governor is expected to sign it into law at 8 p.m. tonight, and that is what you see, the podium and all the pens that he'll be using to make that action official. Again, that's happening just after our show ends, 8 p.m. So we'll have the latest for you, I'm sure, tomorrow. For now, Brandis, back to you.
Some tense moments, passionate moments there, Amanda. Thank you. And now to Paris and legislative priorities on Capitol Hill. Paris.
Brandis, the new Republican-controlled Congress is in session, and things are a little tense, especially after last week's marathon and chaotic House Speaker vote where Representative Kevin McCarthy finally got the gavel on the 15th try. What does that portend for the next 2 years? Joining us, our first-term Illinois Congressman Jonathan Jackson, a Democrat, and Illinois Congressman Sean Casten, also a Democrat. We should mention we reached out to all the members of the Republican delegation in Illinois, but they declined our request. Our thanks to both of you for joining us tonight. You were both in the House chamber for that marathon and chaotic week. What was your experience on the floor, Congressman Casten, witnessing all of that?
You know, to be honest, it was just a little bit embarrassing. You know, this should be a formality. You've got members who have got families there who are ready to go home. People want to welcome people to their offices. And, you know, the conversation that I had both with my Republican and Democratic colleagues was it feels like we have three parties right now in Congress. We have Democrats who have a plurality of the seats, a very small minority of essentially the Chaos Caucus who was caucusing with the Republicans. And you had moderate Republicans who couldn't get their agenda done without getting the consent of these sort of 20 in the Chaos Caucus. And it doesn't make the Congress look good. It doesn't bode well for the future, but I'm hoping that the Republican caucus can find a way to work through this.
And we all saw these images on TV, but did you hear any of the conversations that were taking place, Congressman Casten?
I mean, certainly it's a small room, and yes, you do hear some of the shuffle going back and forth. I mean, it was an audible gasp in the room when Matt Gaetz voted present on that 14th vote, and you know, you don't wish that of somebody to be humiliated in public, and yet there it was, and you know, it was a palpable tension in that room when that went down.
Well, after the 15th try, as we mentioned, Kevin McCarthy did take the gavel as a speaker. Here's a little bit of what he said.
My responsibility, our responsibility, is to our country.
Congressman Jackson, first of all, congratulations on being sworn in. A little delayed there for your freshman term, but you are officially a member of Congress now. What do you think that fight says about how the House will be governed over the next 2 years?
Well, again, I want to thank the members and the residents in the 1st Congressional District. I'm a freshman and very excited. And I thank cooperation from my colleague, Representative Casten, for his generosity. I think it says that this was supposed to be the easiest vote. And so now the heavy lifting begins. And with these hairline triggers on what can start this process all over again, I think Americans had the opportunity to see a great civics lesson that this is how our government works, that you can have the majority vote. This wasn't a plurality. This was decided with the majority. So Mr. Hakeem Jeffries won 14 times, if you will. And then finally, Mr. McCarthy won. So I think people had an upfront witness to history on plurality versus majority. We come from a state that has a plurality. Many other states have a majority. I was honored to have voted for an African-American and particularly a capable leader in the leadership of the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries 15 times in a row. And so he is my choice for Speaker of the House. And one of the unintended consequences that I think was good is that because the floor is for members only, and there was so much downtime, we had the opportunity to meet other members in the Republican Party. I took full advantage of that and introduced myself over and over again. So we're off to a good start.
So a little getting to know you time there, albeit a little bit unorthodox. Congressman Casten, one of the big changes here going forward is the fact that Republicans will lead several committees, including the Oversight Committee. Members of the Freedom Caucus will be leading some of these committees, especially on oversight. They want to scrutinize DOJ investigations into Trump on January 6th. How do you think Democrats are going to interact with Republicans on that committee and other committees?
Well, some of this is sort of the normal course, right? I mean, both parties have their agendas, and when the gavels change hands, you follow the agenda of that party that controls the hearings, and that's we may disagree, but I think people can respectfully disagree, up to the point that we're disagreeing on whether or not we should have a democracy. And I think what concerns a lot of us, and I find myself reminding people this all the time, there are 535 people in this country, 537, who get a security clearance without a background check. 435 members of the House, 100 senators, the president and the vice president. That's the nature of our democracy. We now have people running the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, who are implicated in an investigation going on at the Department of Justice, who were referred to the Office of Congressional Ethics by the January 6th committee for failing to testify, explain the background for some incriminating texts that were sent. And they are now going to be heading committees that have oversight of the judicial branch. And Speaker McCarthy has created a special committee that's going to have the top level of clearance to actually investigate the judicial branch. If this was a judge, you'd be saying you need to recuse yourself. And so we now find ourselves with a set of congressional rules created by the Republicans that essentially says, if you get in trouble, if you are referred to ethics, we're going to eliminate the Office of Congressional Ethics, and we're going to put people in charge of those oversight committees who are actually implicated in charge of investigating the investigators. And it is not a way to breed trust in our government. It's also not a way to make sure that we continue to be a country that upholds the rule of law.
Sounds like it'll be a tangled web here, but then you're going to have substantive votes, Congressman Jackson, especially on things like increasing the debt limit or else risking the country defaulting on its loans or its debt and sending the economy into a tailspin. Do you think there are going to be 4 more Republicans that will cross the aisle with Democrats to vote to increase the debt limit, or is it going to be held hostage?
I wouldn't speculate. I would assume that it would be held hostage. This was a hostage taking from the outset. I think that process will continue. And we have to watch and see how they govern. They are in charge. They have the rules. They have the majority. And we now have to respond. It doesn't look as if they're going to capitulate. There was a core group that stood there. And so now these are obligations people need to understand that the United States government made last year that they have to pay for this year. And so to do something as radical as cutting these budgets means that we're reneging on the promises and commitments that we've already made. So we are not in agreement with that, and we think it's very disruptive. And so we're going to continue to go forward to try to reconcile and help them help themselves.
Congressman Jackson, you got some scrutiny in your campaign for receiving around $500,000 from a PAC financed by disgraced FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. What do you think his interest was in your campaign, especially given all that's happened to him and FTX since?
I never met him, and you would have to ask.
You would have, okay. Well, do you seek to be on the Digital Asset Working Group? That's a subcommittee in the House that's ostensibly charged with coming up with regulations for the crypto industry.
No.
So you're not going to be on. Has you've been a proponent of the crypto industry, especially as a way to help communities of color bank. Has your opinion changed on that, given what's happened to FTX and seeing so many people lose money?
I've always been a proponent for regulation in crypto as an asset, and I still stand firm with that. I have not had a strong position in crypto, and I've not had an unusual relationship. I've taken a position on the pandemic prevention, but nothing out of the ordinary on crypto.
All right, Congressman Casson, Congressman Jackson, congratulations on being sworn in the 118th Congress, and it's going to be a very interesting 2 years. Thanks very much. And now to Brandis, and a familiar headache for many Chicagoans. Brandis.
Right, Paris. Many of us are all too familiar with having to sit through the frustration of traffic. And now there is data to prove just how bad it is. A recent report shows that the average Chicago area driver spent 155 hours in traffic last year. That is the highest in North America and second highest in the world. And it is up from pandemic-affected delays of 104 hours here in 2021. Here to discuss his findings and what's behind the traffic is the author of the report, Bob Pishu, who's also a transportation analyst with INRIX, a global traffic data and analytics company. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chicago is listed as the most congested U.S. city. So for those who have not read your report, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so that means that the typical driver in Chicago spent 155 hours sitting in traffic last year. Now, as you mentioned, it was the highest in the country, and there are some reasons I'm sure we'll get into that. But what that basically shows, though, is that Chicago's back from pre-pandemic levels of traffic, with traffic patterns kind of mirroring that pre-COVID normal.
And let's get into some of those factors then. What is leading to this?
Yeah, one thing that was interesting about Chicago was that pretty much every major U.S. city saw their morning commute come back last year. That, if you recall, that was kind of one of the first things that fell off during COVID was that morning commute. It was much lighter for travelers. Well, Chicago had that, but then also had a larger increase in that afternoon commute as well. So with both of those factors, it led to Chicago's delays increasing over 2021.
And so our viewers understand, Bob, how did you calculate these findings? How did you come up with this ranking?
Yeah, so INRIX collects traffic data from a multitude of sources, things like car navigation units and anonymous GPS probe data and trucking fleet. So what we do is we take all that data, and we've done this report for years, at least for as long as I've done it. Chicago has not yet been at the top until this year. But what we do is we basically analyze year over year what is happening on the roads and streets of Chicago and nearly 300 other U.S. cities, as well as some global cities, to see how traffic changes.
You also found that drivers spent about 7% more hours stuck in traffic than pre-pandemic levels. Why do you think that is if remote work is more common now, certainly than it was before the pandemic?
Yeah, so last year was kind of the shift from heavy telecommuting that we saw in 2021 or 2020 and 2021 more to a hybrid schedule. And I think that a lot of people got back on the roads. Also, there are numerous, pretty much most of the year operated without heavy restrictions. There were a couple in place. And so that kind of opened things up. But, by and large, it is the fact that vehicle miles traveled, the amount people drive, is about back to normal. So with those factors, as well as a lot of areas worked on construction projects, and that slowed people down, and other things that led to increases in traffic congestion last year.
Also, how much of the design of Chicago's expressways are a factor in how much time we spend in our cars?
Well, certainly the road network is a factor anywhere you go, right? In terms of congestion. What this tells me is that officials are likely, working to manage congestion, to relieve congestion in some places, to build alternatives to congestion like bus transit and rail transit. So what this tells me is that, this is always a goal, right? Usually safety comes first, and we've had some troubling safety statistics come out the last 3 years. But after that, it comes, how do we move the most people the most effectively? And so that using various strategies, it's my guess that they will continue to do that.
Because related to that, Chicago has 3 of the top 25 worst corridors in the U.S. How does that factor into, and we're looking at what some of those are right now, those major thoroughfares there. Bob, how does that factor in?
Right. Yeah. So these are kind of classic bottlenecks that form. A lot of the interstate system, when it was built to, those 1960s, 1950s, 1960s, and even 1970s kind of standards for volumes. And we've certainly exceeded that in most areas, but you still have kind of remnants of that. Most places do. So it's built for essentially a system with fewer vehicles, frankly. And so it's about, and some of those are on this list in the top 25, but others are also pretty bad. So it's important to focus on these key places where traffic gets bottled up.
And Bob, we've got just a few seconds left, but bottom line, what does all this congestion mean for drivers? How are they impacted?
Well, they're significantly impacted, but I think what it means, the silver lining in all of this, I guess, is that, it does kind of look like normal. It's people are back on the roads doing things, participating in commerce and the economy and seeing friends and seeing, meeting up. And so all of that, I think, we do pay a price for that in terms of traffic congestion, but I think a lot of us, remember the last few years, and a lot of people would, sit there and go, okay, I don't mind sitting in traffic as much if I get to do the things I love to do.
If it means they get to resume some sense of normalcy. Bob Pishu, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Up next, a call center in Chatham that's banking on the community. Stay with us.
Film to walk in. Mike Q.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. A once shuttered Target location in the Chatham neighborhood is getting a new lease on life. Riverwoods-based Discover Financial Services has transformed the 100,000 square foot building into a call center. The company says it plans to employ 1,000 people, mostly from the surrounding area, by the year 2024. Today, with about 500 employees in place, Discover leadership says their community-focused approach is paying off. Producer Erica Gunderson recently brought us this story. Here's another look.
And I do thank you for your patience. I certainly do appreciate it.
By the time we're fully ramped up, there'll be about 10 million calls a year that's funneled through this customer care center.
In the 11 years Watisse Gaddings has worked for Discover Financial Services, she's managed call centers across the country.
For me, well before being a Discover employee, I was a girl from the South Side first.
Gaddings' role as Regional Operations Director of the Discover Customer Care Center in Chatham is something of a homecoming for the former Southsider. But it's also something of a departure, since the dense urban Chatham has little in common with Discover's other call centers, all of which are in suburban office parks where the workforces are majority white.
There is this ecosystem of family and connectedness unlike we have at any other location. We're proud that almost 90% of our employees live within 5 miles of the center. We've been operating for a little over a year. We have well over 150 employees that have been promoted, and some of them have been promoted multiple times since starting here.
CEO Roger Hochschild says when Discover began making plans in 2019 to open their first new call center in over 20 years, the company took a fresh look at their approach.
Call centers are critically important for us at Discover. We're the only major bank with 100% U.S.-based customer service. We picked Chatham because we wanted to do what we could to bring opportunity to communities that had been underinvested. And I strongly believe that's something that large companies can do, and only large companies can do, which is bring jobs at scale into the community. Close to 90% of our employees here in the center are Black, and so as part of our focus around diversity and equity and inclusion and changing the racial makeup of Discover, this center is critically important to that. The attrition rate is less than half of what we see in our other centers. There's a faster speed to proficiency. This is our best performing call center, and I couldn't be more excited about that.
Greater Chatham Initiative Executive Director Nidra Sims-Fears says Discover's success story thus far shows it makes good business sense to bank on Chatham.
We have good housing stock that's affordable. We have good schools. We have good transportation. We have able and willing workforce, and we have good retail. What else do you want?
Employees at the Chatham Center say working close to home in jobs with growth opportunity is paying dividends for them.
I was really, really fortunate that this was available for me. So it's been kind of like a dream come true because I can be a mom, a really, really great mom, and I can come to work and be in corporate America, essentially.
Before, I wasn't able to basically be in the family's life at all, really. I wasn't responsible for dropping my daughter off at daycare or picking her up because I wasn't able to. Now I'm able to. With the hours that I have now, I can pick her up.
Everything I needed to know about working in the call center, they trained me to do it.
everything I need to know now about doing my job as a technical apprentice. They're training me to do it.
In addition to drawing from the community for its workforce, Discover scaled their service needs to allow them to contract with small local businesses.
We just want the opportunity. We don't want any handouts. We don't want anyone to give us anything pro bono. We just want you to point us in the right direction, and we'll pull up our sleeves and we'll show you that we're capable of doing work on this magnitude and even bigger.
The Chatham Center also features a community center, which local nonprofits can use at no cost for meetings and events. The rotating selection of art filling the space comes from I Paint My Mind, which curates arts from local artists for businesses.
They're getting this incredible art in their space, so they get value and that incredible service from us, but also knowing that that helps I Paint My Mind deliver much needed and often underfunded arts programs to local schools is way more than a cherry on top for us.
Discover Leadership says this model of community investment as a business decision has created a whole new blueprint for future endeavors.
It's really transformed us as a company. I like to say we actually get more out of this than the people of Chatham.
That's what allows us to translate that into good business for us to make sure that they thrive, and through that they take really good care of our customers in return.
The business results speak for themselves. Again, as I said, this is our top performing call center, and so we are committed to Chatham for the long term.
And 1 year in, the employees we spoke with say they're all in on Discover too.
Often bigger companies are scared to come into communities like this, right? They're scared that they won't get the right talent or just they won't be successful. And I think Discover said, well, we're going to take that chance.
It's a lot of untapped talent in communities just like this, but you don't know about it until you actually go there, and that's what Discover actually did.
I can't wait to see, like, a year from now, how it's changed the community and the people within it.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Erica Gunderson.
And Discover recently announced it's applying the Chatham model to Whitehall, Ohio. The company says it'll invest more than $16 million in building and staffing a new customer care center in that region beginning next spring. And now, Paris, back to you.
Brandis, thanks a lot. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, a new site shares data on COVID-19 wastewater, how you and researchers can make the most of the numbers. If you're a resident of Cook County, you could see your medical debt disappear. We share all the details. A comet not seen for at least 10,000 years will soon be visible in the night sky. We share how you can see it. And the art behind the Wintrust mural building that can be seen from the Kennedy Expressway. But first, some more of today's top stories. University of Illinois at Chicago faculty take to the picket line.
No contract. No contract.
The faculty is not on strike, at least not yet. Strike date is set for a week from today if progress isn't made at the bargaining table. UIC faculty have been negotiating over compensation and providing students access to mental health care. And there's still time to get your Mega Million lottery ticket, although maybe the game should be called Mega Billion. That's, of course, because the pot has swelled to an estimated $1.1 billion. It's the third largest jackpot in Mega Millions history, and the fourth time in 4 years the winnings have topped $1 billion. So if you win and take the one-time cash payout, that means you're going to take home about $432 million after taxes. Not exactly $1 billion. It's a very, 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 very long shot, as you know, although a $1.3 billion prize was won here in Des Plaines just back in July. The drawing is tonight at 10. Good luck to everybody. The Lincoln Park Zoo welcomes a furry pride of triplets. The 3 new African lion cubs are doing well, and zoo officials say they've already started nursing. They joined their older brother, Pili Pili, who was born last month to Zari and dad Jabari. The gender and names of the 3 cubs have not yet been determined. The new cubs will still have to hit milestones like opening their eyes for the first time, so they won't be visible to the public for at least a few weeks. Health officials aren't letting wastewater go to waste. A new interactive website shows how much COVID-19 there is in wastewater, allowing researchers and residents to make use of the data. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. So, Patty, it's a website by the Illinois Department of Public Health and UIC Discovery Partners Institute about wastewater, not the kind of thing we usually surf the web to look for.
Right.
So what can people expect
from this? We're not searching the wastewater itself.
The wastewater web.
Yes,
the worldwide wastewater web.
This is all the data that they've been collecting since 2021 from 75 wastewater treatment sites around the state. You can go to this website, pick your community, click on it, and there is all the data for you to take a look at. And especially they note this is to look at trends. It's showing the presence of COVID-19 in the wastewater in that site over the time period since 2021.
And in layman's terms, how is COVID detected in wastewater?
So, you know, we all shed the virus in various ways, and it comes out in our waste as well, winds up at a treatment plant. They take a sample, it goes to the lab at UIC. They find out, you know, how much of the COVID is present. It also goes to Argonne National Laboratory, where they do genetic sequencing because they're looking there for mutations of the virus, which is how we found out about Omicron before people started showing up with it in infections. So it tends to be like a leading indicator, or one of the leading indicators of where COVID might be heading in the population.
So this why it might be necessary to sort of detect COVID in wastewater as opposed to just, you know, looking at COVID tests and results?
Especially health officials say since people stopped going to like public or communal test sites, we're all doing it so much more at home. We're not really reporting those results except to maybe our boss or our loved ones. So they need to be looking at different sort of indicators of information of how much COVID is out there in the community.
All right, the worldwide
wastewater web.
We'll be surfing that later.
Yes.
Patty Wetley, thanks very much.
Thanks.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website, where you can find a link to the wastewater data for your community. It's all at WTTW.com/news. And now to Brandis and a new initiative to help people pay off their medical bills. Brandis.
Paris, some Cook County residents may be receiving a welcome surprise in the mail this month as Cook County works to forgive millions of dollars in medical debt. It affects 27% of Cook County residents, and 42% of those are people of color. Now the county hopes it's found a solution for some of them. Joining us to explain are Allison Sesso, President and CEO of RIP Medical Debt, and Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. Thanks to you both for joining us. Madam President, let's start with you, please. If you could give us a sense of how many Cook County residents might be impacted by this program.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. You know, we've put together a program that's $12 million. It enables us to buy medical debt from providers. And that's the role that RIP Medical Debt will help us take care of. We are going to enter into agreements with healthcare providers, with hospitals and hospital systems to pay off the debts of people who are unable to meet their medical debts. And the way in which this works is that medical providers, hospitals, often sell their debt, their uncollectible debt, to collection agencies for pennies on the dollar. And instead of selling that debt to collection agencies, they'll sell it to the county. We will wipe out that debt, clean up people's credit, and enable them to move forward. And we have to understand that medical debt disproportionately impacts communities of color, Black and brown communities, disproportionately, of course, people who are at the margins, who have modest means. And this will enable us to support them and help them, because medical debt not only impacts your credit, but your ability sometimes to get employment or affordable housing, and surely impacts people's willingness to secure additional health care, because the burden of unpaid debt is always on the horizon. So we're very grateful to RIP Medical Debt for working with us as partners to implement this program.
And President, how is the county funding the purchase of this debt?
Well, we're deeply indebted to President Biden and Congress for the American Rescue Plan Act, the resources that we've gotten to help deal with the pandemic and economic recovery. And we're using some of those resources for our medical debt program.
Allison, tell us how our RIP-MD, how you all partner with municipalities to wipe out medical debt.
Yeah, so it's really a creative way of leveraging our model, I have to say. And Cook County was the first one to the table and has really started a trend. I'll tell you that I think what the president has started here has been taking fire across the United States. People have been paying attention to this issue more, and more municipalities have been reaching out to us. But we are dedicated to Cook County since they were first in line. How we work with them is we, just like any other donor to RIP, we take those donated dollars. And as the president said, we enter into contracts with hospitals and we analyze their bad debt files. These are people who they've tried to collect on in the past, but they've been unable to collect on. And we buy that debt and buy it for pennies on the dollar because we're leveraging the for-profit debt market in terms of pricing. So there's a for-profit debt market out there that we mimic, and we take advantage of that pricing, apply it to this nonprofit approach, and we're able to take just some relatively little amount of money and turn it into a lot of debt relief. So $1 on average relieves $100 of medical debt in our model. So it's a very smart use of, I think, municipal dollars. Well, and it's actually, this is federal dollars, so that's being used here.
$1 to $100 is a pretty significant difference. Allison, to be clear, people cannot apply for this program necessarily to have their debt forgiven. How does it work for the folks who are interested?
Yeah, that's really important. People should not call us and try to fill out an application, which is the beauty of our program, right? We can help millions of people at once, thousands of people in a single debt file. What we do is it's source driven. So we go to the hospital again and we get their file, we analyze it, look at everyone that qualifies. It's usually a huge percentage of the file. And then we apply letters to all those people and let them know that we've bought their debt and we've relieved it. So it is only like, it's like winning the lotto without ever applying. You just get a letter in the mail that lets you know that you had bad debt and you no longer have that bad debt.
Okay, and we're looking at a brief graphic of folks who are eligible for the Cook County program. Must be a Cook County resident, of course, have an income up to 400% of the federal poverty guidelines, and must have 5% or more of their household income consumed by medical debt. President Preckwinkle, how does medical debt impact people? Of course, you mentioned it affects their credit, but what else? How else can it impact folks?
Well, it's the principal cause of bankruptcy in this country. And particularly in Black and brown communities, it's a tremendous challenge. So we're helping people not just with their medical debt, but clean up their credit, enable them, as I said, to secure employment, because sometimes people look at credit scores when they're looking at employment, affordable housing, and it's also sometimes an impediment to seeking additional medical care. If you know that you've got an outstanding medical debt, you might not be so willing to pursue the medical care that you desperately need. So in a lot of ways, I think it'll be a tremendous boon to the residents of Cook County. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with RIP to help us implement the program.
Allison, as we've discussed, the county has approved $12 million for this program. But for an individual whose debt might be relieved, how much money are we talking about that might be off their backs now?
I mean, it's going to be a wide range. And some people, it's a deductible amount. It could be $2,000, $3,000. For other people, it's a significant debt. It really depends on what the situation is, how much medical care you needed. I think the thing that people don't understand is that sometimes it really is just a $5,000. I say just a $5,000 bill, but that's a significant lift for a lot of families, especially at that level that we talked about, 400% of poverty and below. People don't have the ability to make those ends meet and to pay that extra bill. And I think the mental health angle on this is also underappreciated. People feel a lot of anxiety when they have medical debt. These are the letters that we receive back from people when they tell us that their debt has been relieved across the country. They feel overwhelmed, and they absolutely, President is 100% right. They do not go to the hospitals to get the care that they need when they think they owe a medical debt, or they do owe a medical debt, or they're concerned that they might get a medical debt. And that actually undermines their overall health and well-being, because we know anxiety leads to hypertension, all these other things that end up actually undermining people's health and well-being, which is the opposite of what our healthcare system should be doing.
Even if it's a small amount, sounds like it could make a big difference for the folks who no longer owe that amount of money. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to Allison Sesso and Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle.
Thank you.
Up next, something new in the sky. We explain right after this. What should the city be doing to better support Black Chicagoans who are victims and survivors of hate crimes?
Classic city of Chicago, we work in silos, so the left hand doesn't know what the right hand doing, and the constituents get left out in between.
Power is the voice. The power is the numbers. The power are the people. The ability to sway election is the power.
If If you look up at the night sky next month, you might see a bright green light. Nothing to fear. It's not the little green visitors coming to Earth. It's a green-hued comet that comes from the outer reaches of the solar system. NASA says it might have come this way about 10,000 years ago and is likely the last time it will ever pass Earth again. And joining us now to tell us more is Mark Hammergren, astronomer, science communicator, and president and CEO of Farther Horizons. Mark Hammergren, good to see you. As always, tell us about this new green-hued comet we might see next month.
Yeah, so people are getting a little excited about this comet. It's named C2022E3, and it's making its close pass by the sun. Maybe its first pass, maybe it was here before. But in any case, it's going to be passing relatively close to the Earth, 26 million miles, on February 1st.
Right in our backyard.
And around, yeah, celestial backyard, it absolutely is. And it may get bright enough for people to see with the naked eye without binoculars or a telescope. May. So, you know, comets, people say comets are like cats. They run around at night and they do what they want. We don't know exactly how bright it's going to get, but there's a good bet that it'll get at the edge of visibility.
And you're saying it may have come here 10,000 years ago, or it may not have. What's with the discrepancy there?
Anytime you have a really long period orbit like that, if indeed it came by before, it's really hard to nail down the exactly how big that orbit is, exactly how long ago it was. And that's because, you know, the orbits get tugged around by other planets, that kind of thing. You can predict that decently well, but still the errors creep in. So we really don't know. It does look like it's going to be passing by the sun and going out and not coming back, though. It's got a little bit extra velocity, so it won't return.
So it's going to leave the orbit of the solar system, apparently. So what gives it its greenish hue?
Yeah, most comets show greenish glow around their nucleus, the actual icy object that forms a comet. And that is gas that has been vaporized from the frozen ices, water, carbon dioxide, these kinds of things. And the greenish glow comes from excited atoms, mostly of carbon, diatomic carbon, two carbon atoms stuck together. Or this gas called cyanogen, which sounds really bad, C and N together, but it's incredibly thin, diffuse, so no danger to us.
All right, you mentioned we might need binoculars. We might be able to see this with the naked eye. Where should we be looking?
Well, in general, it will be visible in the northeastern sky just before sunrise, so in the early morning hours. In any case, you'll really want a dark sky to view this from. No local lights and no moon in the sky if you can help it. Later on, towards February 1st, early February, it'll move more towards the northern sky and be visible throughout the evening. But in any case, you'll need to know exactly where to look, so you'll need a detailed guide. And there are multiple ones there on the web. I recommend Astronomy Magazine as a good source.
Sort of tell us where to cast our glaze in the night sky. Do you recall seeing any striking comets over the last few years?
You know, bright-ish comets appear maybe every 5 years or so, not regularly, just every once in a while. And I can remember some comets that were visible to the naked eye, but not incredibly impressive. For me, you got to go back into the 1990s. I'm dating myself, I know, when comets, two comets came within the space of a couple of years, Comet Hale-Bopp and Comet Hyakutake. Brilliant sights. Oh, just amazing, gorgeous.
Any threat that comets are going to come closer than 26 million light years, or miles, I'm sorry, 26 million miles, it's significantly closer than light years. I mean, any threat of coming into Earth's atmosphere from an asteroid or a comet in the coming centuries?
Short answer is we do not know of any specific threat, any one that is definitively heading here. Not even any that have a very high risk of hitting us. No comets are known to be on a collision course or even coming very close. This comet, for example, comes within 26 million miles or so. That's a quarter of the way to the sun, more than that. So most pass safely by. there may be a long-term risk just due to the population of comets and asteroids, for that matter, which is why NASA and other organizations are searching for and studying these. I headed up a major project a few years ago to nail down their orbits, and none of them were going to hit the Earth.
I think we talked about that with you. By the way, what is the difference between an asteroid and a comet? Remind us.
Yeah, it's the main difference is one of origin and what they were made of originally. Asteroids formed in the inner solar system, and they're mostly rocky bodies. Comets, on the other hand, formed much farther out where the solar system was colder, and they're made mostly of ices and dusts. Now, there is kind of a spectrum between the two types, so you'll get icy asteroids and rocky comets, but that's the main difference between the two.
All right, and as we mentioned, this comet might be exiting our solar system and going into the great beyond after February. So, Mark Hammergren, we will be looking, and thank you very much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure, as always. Take care.
You as well. And up next, the story behind a mural on a well-known site along the Kennedy Expressway. Stay with us.
Coverage of science and technology on Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Joel M. Friedman, president of the Alvin H. Baum Family Fund.
Ever been driving down the Kennedy Expressway and wondering who's behind the artwork seen on the Wintrust billboard? Arts correspondent Angel Edo shares exactly how Wintrust Bank partners with different organizations around the city to bring these creations to life.
It's one of the city's biggest and most visible forms of public art, easily seen from the Kennedy Expressway. With a 3-year waiting list, the Wintrust billboard is exclusive to Chicago nonprofits that have a partnership with the bank. December's creative partnership is with the Daniel Murphy Scholarship Fund.
A nonprofit is chosen, and then that nonprofit gets to pick whichever artist they would like to work with. You'll notice in the very top on the water tower is a Wintrust logo, because that's the only spot in which we can have a logo.
This month's Wintrust mural building was designed by Daniel Murphy alum Karen Spears. Her bright and encouraging message was blown up to match the size of the billboard, with all 3 sides weighing a total of nearly 1,500 pounds of vinyl mesh.
This moment feels so great, not to just represent Daniel Murphy, but to represent my city, the city that made me, and being able to share my art with hundreds of thousands of people driving past every day is so rewarding. This is a huge opportunity, but I would hope that it opens up more doors, not only for my artistry, but for millions of other people that now know who and what Daniel Murphy does for the city's young people.
So we are Chicago's largest high school scholarship granting organization. We have been around for 34 years. Karen is an awesome representation of what we hope our Murphy Scholars become. She's an artist, she's an entrepreneur, she's a businesswoman, and so she really is just the example of what we hope Murphy Scholars become. They are born leaders, and we just help cultivate that passion, that interest.
Words have power, and art has the ability to inspire. And so in designing this Wintrust mural, the biggest thing that I wanted to incorporate into the design are powerful words with eye-catching colors.
It's Spears' eye-catching calligraphy that reads uplifting tomorrow's leaders that sets the tone for a 3-part story that depicts what the organization described as lifelong support.
The second panel features 3 scholars, young people who are going through high school, and the swirls really represent the support that Daniel Murphy offers throughout the program. And the last panel represents them embarking the big city. They're adults now, and they've gone through the program with the people that they started with, and now they're embarking in this journey of career together. And so that really summed up my personal journey as a Daniel Murphy scholar, and I wanted that reflected in the pieces.
And while this mural, like the rest, is only up for a month, Wintrust says they've seen the support each organization receives extend beyond the duration of the billboard residency.
I think it's a really great chance to catch people when they're not expecting it. You're not in a museum. you're kind of captive. So it's this really great chance to show people art in an otherwise, you know, daily dredge.
Even encourage more young people to be like me, you know, bright-eyed Karen in 8th grade, wanting more for herself and more for her family. It's a truly, you know, full circle moment that I hope that more young people get involved with the organization.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Eden.
You can catch Spears and Daniel Murphy's Uplifting Tomorrow's Leaders billboard from the Kennedy Expressway at North Avenue now through Friday. Back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 7. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe. Good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.